Happy Friday. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. It's great to see you. Happy cocktail night and cheers, my dears. What a great, lively show I have for you tonight. This is a format I have not done before. I want to say cheers, my dears, to Kaz. Great to see you in Wisconsin. Congrats again on your son's marriage. It looks like it was such a fun day. Such a beautiful day. I loved the colors of all the women's dresses. I don't know if that was planned, but it was so beautiful. It was like a desert rainbow across. I mean, it's not deserty landscape, but just the colors were so soft. It was so nice, but not pastel. My favorite kinds of colors. It was super pretty. Karen, great to see you. Cheers, my dears. Good evening. I just put my thing down without taking a sip. I must be a barbarian. I have not had a drink of wine since last week. That is good. Linda, great to see you. Cheers, my dears. It is steamy. It is steamy here too, and in New Jersey. You know, getting all these reports on the news and stuff. There's been a lot of news lately. It's hard to wipe the smile off my face, but all of this news, heat waves and all the dangers that it causes for particularly much older people and much younger people, it is a very worrying thing. Europe is getting blasted. I mean, you know, I lived in Europe for years in London and Amsterdam, and all my memory of that, because I've tried to block a lot of that out. It was so hard so often. No air conditioning. I mean, we never had air conditioning, and we'd go into stores and there's no air conditioning. I mean, it was so hard when it was hot, and it's hotter than it's ever been apparently, like in this generation, this lifetime. So God bless everybody out there who's struggling with the heat right now. It has been wicked. Oh, I think I missed. Was that Anita? I just saw London, Ontario. Let me check. Anita, good to see you. Happy Friday. Oh, Mom, you're on. I thought you were already on your trip. Happy Friday. Teresa, happy Friday. Eugenia, oh my God, hot Northwest Arkansas. I bet it's scorching. I hope that you're okay. I hope it hasn't been an absolute misery. I mean, it is a thing when you need to take a shower like multiple times a day, as I've been doing. It's hard. It's just time out of the day that you don't have, and what a stupid way to waste time. But it feels good to get refreshed when it's as bad as this. Robin, cheers from another Wisconsinite. Oh, wait a minute. Who was the first Wisconsinite? Who did I? Oh, Kaz, of course, Kaz. Christine, great to see you in Brockport, New York. Great to see you. Wendy, cheers, my dears. And remember, Wendy, Monet on Sunday, if you want to log on again. The Wednesday Monet class was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. The first time I run it is always a challenge for me because I'm trying to figure out if I have too much content, not enough, just right. It was like the three bears, right? Goldilocks. It was definitely too much. So I'm going to be more careful about the pacing on Sunday because I was like 18 minutes over in this last one, but it was lots of fun. Lots of fun. Now, if you have not received stuff, you should have already twice at this point. I sent the same email out twice, so let me know because often what happens is on the receiving end, the file is too big and I don't get a failure notice. It just doesn't come through because there's a storage problem on the receiving end. So just let me know because if you are signed up, you should have definitely gotten it earlier this last week and again a few days later, just to be sure. Linda Ann, happy Friday. Good to see you. Linda H, Linda Ann, I just left you a message. Linda H, good to see you in Massachusetts. It was a friendly message, Linda Ann. I just left you a voice message on the phone. Joy, cheers, my dears. Great to see you. Great to see you. And Kaz, oh, I'm glad it was a good wedding. Juliet, thank you for these awesome. Thank you, Juliet. It is a lot of fun. Today was a particularly hard one to put together. I was working on it yesterday and all day today. I started at 6:30 in the morning and I just finished in time to take another shower and get out the door. But it's going to be well worth it because the show tonight is a change from what I had planned to do tonight. But the show tonight, I'm going to look at all of the rugs. There's at least 200 slides I have for you tonight. So my pace is going to be different. We're usually very relaxed on Friday nights. I'm going to be moving a little bit faster tonight, more like a slide show, almost like a documentary coming at you of all of these rugs, because there's so much to see in the two houses that we visited as a group. Beauport, which is also called the Sleeper McCann House in Gloucester, Mass., and Cogswell Grant in Ipswich, Mass., both in Cape Ann. Both have enormous collections of rugs and folk art. So lots of photos to get through. We'll see how far we get. We'll see how it goes. I haven't had this large of a show before, so I'm kind of challenging myself to get the right pace going so that we can enjoy it without being rushed and all of that stuff, because it's such good content. I don't want to rush it. And I am going to say something. I am going to say something naughty. My hope tonight was I was hoping to go on Wednesday to the, the McGowan teaching chapter did those fairy tale rugs, and there was a show in Sturbridge, right? So I went to Sturbridge the other night because I picked up my friend Rebecca at the airport, right, from Storyteller Wool, and we went on a great antiquing toot, and we were looking around at shops and supplies and stuff, and I dropped her off because she's a junior in the certification, and she was there learning and participating and setting the show up. But thank goodness she let me know on the morning that I was going to head out and take photos of the show so that I could share them with you tonight. That there was no photography, or at least you couldn't share it like in a Facebook post. And I thought that is rather disappointing. And the naughty aspect of that I'm going to say is, and I don't mean this very sternly, I just mean it as something to think about. The Pro McGowan certified teachers are a huge part of this business historically and still. And they have so much knowledge, do so much good work, put out so much good work. These shows are like a gem for the rest of us, and it's very hard to catch them for most people, even in this country, never mind the world, to be able to be at the right place and the right time to catch a show. It would be a very nice thing to be able to take photos and share them on social media, free advertising. Because in my mind, this dying art that I'm desperately trying to revive, it's hard, right? It's an uphill battle. It's molasses rolling uphill. It would be very nice when there were shows to be able to take photographs, post them on social media, so that other people might say, oh, what is that? Why, that's rug hooking. You might be interested in learning how to do it. And then maybe there's more of us in great numbers. These are great opportunities for people to see and learn about this craft. And it's a shame to not be able to share a big and important show like that. So I was rather disappointed. I ended up not going up because there was no point in taking another trip to Massachusetts on an already difficult week. Instead, I figured let's go through the photos that I took the day before when we were at Cape Ann. So that explains the change of theme for tonight. Oh my gosh, I missed a bunch of action. Genia, Robin, Kristen, Wendy, Linda H., Linda Ann, Joy, Kaz, Juliet, Daniela, great to see you. Welcome back. 104 there. That is warm. Ryan, great to see you. Happy Friday. New to the group. Amateur Puncher, good for you. That sounds great. Let us know how it goes and chime in whenever you want. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Huge welcome to you. Oh, you're getting the welcomes. I can't believe you were with Storyteller the other day. Two of my favorites. She's one of my, thank you, Daniela. She's one of my very good buddies. She's one of my buddies that I'm the closest to, and it's nice to have those people in this business. And she does mostly punch. Well, she does a lot of wool and punch. She does everything. And she's getting Pro McGowan certified, so obviously she's a hooker too. She just did some great quilly stuff. She's got all kinds of things going on. And I'm going to say it again, she's on the same schedule as I am with Rug Hooking Magazine with a book coming out next year. So they kind of like find their authors for a year at the same time, and we are both among that group. So it's very nice for us because we figure in promoting next year when the book does come out for Rug Hooking Magazine, we'll be on the same kind of a circuit, which will be nice because I really love her and we get along so well. She does make beautiful yarn. And Linda Ann says it's cooler today, thankfully 69 for the 21 Celsius. Yeah, I'm glad. That sounds very mild, all things considered, right? Courtney, great to see you. Oh, thank you. I wasn't, I hate to stick it to anybody, but it's just, I love to see everything that's going on, not just in this country, but in the world, not just in rug hooking, but in rug making and all kinds of rug stuff, in textiles in general. I like to see what's going on. And social media platforms like Facebook or whatever you're on are so good for that. It's such a good opportunity to share information, to share beautiful things that you will not otherwise see, right? That I feel should not be under lock and key. But anyway, Aileen, great to see you. Happy Friday night. So what do I need to tell you? That's about it. Let me take one more sip before we get into high gear here. It has been hot. I'm not going to drink for thirst. Don't worry, I'll never be able to get through the show if I start drinking for thirst. I just wanted to mention I have had a few emails this week about Amish toothbrush. And I have been teaching it in person, but I have not done a Zoom on Amish toothbrush. So when I get in tonight from running this show, I will pick a couple of calendar days, or I will line up an Amish toothbrush class. And the format that I want to be is to offer it either with no supplies, because to do Amish toothbrush, you can use your hands, and it works fine. It might be that you'd rather have the tool, and that's up to you. It might be that you already have the tool and you just don't know how to do it, and you'd like to have a class. But I'm going to offer it as a full kit, or as just the class, or as just the toothbrush. And the Amish toothbrush is already in the ribbon candy hooking store. So I'm going to figure out how that breaks down. I'm going to offer it at the bargain basement price, as low as I can, that makes sense time-wise for me, so that as many people as possible can sign up for it, because it's just another fun kind of a rag to make with cotton sheets or anything you have that you can just rip, right? It comes out beautifully every time. So that's coming up, and that'll be online, and I'll be posting about that within the next certainly 24 hours. So let's see. So I'm just going to start the slideshow. There are so many beautiful rugs here. You know, both of these houses that we visited on Cape Ann are under the umbrella of historic New England, and I'm going to give them a plug here because I belong to them. I've belonged to them for years. Even when I lived abroad, I still belonged because I often visit their houses. I've been to Beauport, the Sleeper McCann house, many times over the years, starting like 10 or 15 years ago. It's been open since the 20s. But you know, these are all they own a ton of houses, like several dozen, I would say, all over New England, all 6 New England states. I've only been to a fraction of them, and some of them are like very, very, very modern, like the Gropius house, super modern, mid-century, very cool. They have cocktail parties there and all kinds, you know, different themes for different houses, but great organization and worthy, right? They are the stewards of all of the beautiful things, the house itself and the beautiful things within these beautiful houses, priceless collections, right, of Americana. And in the case of Cogswell Grant and Beauport, these for me are my favorite 2 that I've seen so far, because they are very strong on the folk art angle. So I'm going to start with the one that we visited first, and that is Cogswell Grant, right? So it is named after the grant of land that it once was. It was like in like hundreds of acres. It's a much smaller property now, but still vast. Beautiful, at one time working farm, that through the years was handed along. And during the 20th century, when it was bought by Bertram and Nina Little, who I'll introduce you to in just a second with photos, they were huge folk art collectors. They were very serious folk art collectors. And Nina Fletcher Little, if you look her up or if you know her already, she's the author of many books on many folk art subjects, from itinerant painters to hat boxes and band boxes, to historic wallpaper, New England themes, right? Tons and tons of books. Rush lights, that's one of her big things, is lighting. Rush lights, like the piece of rush, like straw, that you would have on the floor as your floor matting, that you would use as like a wick for lights. Very early form of lighting in New England. She had lots of expertise, and she was a real scholar. So the collection that she and her husband Bertram put together over the years, with they had unlimited funds by the look of it. They picked out some beautiful examples of folk art, and one of their favorite areas for collecting was hooked rugs. So we will benefit from that right now. Let's see what we've got. Let me click on our other slideshow, and let's see. Now, I was a ding-dong. I should have created 2 different slideshows, because it's going to be a little tricky for me tonight. I've got over 200 images, so wish me luck here. This is going to work. This is just a beautiful photo of Nina and Bertram Little. And again, her maiden name is Fletcher, so sometimes you get Nina Fletcher. But if you're interested in books on early American collecting and antiques, she is your girl. And her books are on Books, eBay, Amazon, everywhere. These are not new books, right? These are older books. Most of them are pretty affordable. Some of them are much more rare, like staple bound types of things, and in those cases a bit more. So this is them as a couple. They are shaking the old cocktail shaker. It was a very big deal for them. They had more than one home, but at Cogswell Grant, at a certain time of day, I think it was 6, I think our tour guide said, cocktails were very serious, right? It was formal business, time to get the shaker out. And they had a little kitchen area that was super rustic and cute inside the house, not an area that the main tours run through, where they would do their cocktail shaking and then be outside on a beautiful summer night like tonight, really enjoying their place, their thoughts, their collections, what was next, and I'm sure each other. They seem like a lovely couple. This moment in time really gets me because this is Cogswell Grant in, I think, the early 1950s. And they would have, this is a couple, I forget what their name is, but they were antique dealers. And they were very close to the Littles. And they knew their style very well. So they would often come with wagon loads, right? This is like a station wagon of antiques that they knew they would be interested in. So this was one of those great antiquing days, and you see all these boxes or crates that are filled with God knows what, but exciting. And they're kind of taking a rest on the lawn outside Cogswell Grant. That is Cogswell Grant, the house on the right, Mom? You recognize this. And on the left is the barn where you go in now to get your tickets and everything. It's just the same. And a weather vane out on the lawn. So I just can't imagine the excitement of these days pulling up, right, in the 1950s and having a carload of interesting stuff. This was a different day. Another image I found on the internet that I thought was interesting, again, of Cogswell Grant. And in this picture, get this is a real thing. It was a real thing. I doubt it still exists. It was something like the Rush Lighting Association or Club. I think it was the Rush Lighting Club. So in other words, mostly women who are interested in rush lighting, very specific, that formed a club in the 1950s. And because the Fletchers were also so interested in rush lighting, I guess they would have events that had to do with rush lighting at Cogswell Grant. And this is one of the days of one of these events, and you can see people spilling out into the parking area, and it just strikes me as so impossibly charming that the Rush Lighting Club was at Cogswell Grant at this point. I think this was 57, to see what there was to see. Now here we are in 2022 in the same house of the same color, this light apricot color. They call it persimmon. Now this official color is persimmon. I think that maybe the idea of what the color persimmon is has changed over the years, because for me persimmon is almost like a tomato color, like much more intense. But this has always been the color of the house, and it's always been called persimmon. Interesting. This is the front of Cogswell Grant, and this is some of our group. We split into two halves to do the house because it's a very small scale house. It is not a Property Brothers open floor plan, thank goodness. It's very, very tight rooms, and I think we broke into groups of 5, and that was about, even that was kind of pushing it, I thought, because it's so easy to turn around and knock something priceless over, God forbid. God knows our family's good for that specifically, but we did not do that on this trip. Nobody did that. It was all good. But it's like a little chestnut of a house with these small little rooms. This is me and my buddy Anne. I think her daughter Christy took a picture of us here. We had on our fancy shoes, right? Just to protect the floors and the rugs, not so much the stone and all of that stuff. But you're walking on so many rugs at Cogswell Grant. I did a few texture shots in here just to give you a feel for the house. A lot of faux painting in the house. That was such a big deal. You know, the Fletchers tried to keep this early house. They bought an old house because they loved old houses and they loved old stuff. And they tried to keep things painted the way that they originally were and maintain all of this decorative painting. Like on the fireplace behind us, that's decorative marble and like decorative wood grain painting. Now it is wood, but they've done decorative faux wood painting on wood. You see a lot of this in this house, and you'll see a lot of this kind of thing in the background of the pictures that we're looking at. Everywhere that your eye landed upon at both Cogswell Grant and Beauport, we're just talking about Cogswell Grant right now, you saw rugs. Everywhere. You saw a lot of other things that were quite interesting as well, like this little decanter, this mortar and pestle, this painted box, what a treasure box, and this little rug, all sitting on this little clamshell or scallop rug. So beautiful. I want you to notice that even an early rug like this, certainly a 19th century small mat, it probably is cut down from a larger mat, but I want you to notice the tape binding. It's like a twill tape binding. Let's notice these bindings as we go along, because I'm building up to something specific. This is our guide, Michael. Now, of course, we didn't all have the same guide. I was in a group with buddies who we had Michael, and I loved Michael. He was so effusively excited about this group, and we were specifically a rug hooking group. So this was really fun, I think, for all of us, because Michael would normally conduct tours, and he's been doing, they give us the 2 sort of longest standing guides of the house to run these tours with us, and then the sort of liaison was there too to talk. But they were super knowledgeable guides, very, very good. As a former tour guide, I don't always see that, right? But I think Historic New England only hires excellent people. Michael was excellent. And, he normally would run a very sort of standard tour, looking at this painting, looking at this, and, very sort of general. When my mom and I went last time, it was an all portraits tour that we took, just looking at portraits, and that was very specific and really wonderful. But on this specific day, because we're a group of rug hookers, they did not an all, but a really rug themed tour. And it was amazing because we were able to go into rooms that are not normally open to the public and look at rugs that are not normally on display. They can't possibly display everything. So that was super, super exciting for us. And I think it was likewise super exciting for Michael because he ran a different tour than he normally runs. In this case, he had his flashlight out. This was a big thing for me because I've toured all of these houses before. I've never seen a guide with a flashlight before, and it helped a lot. He's showing us the decorative painting here, but you can see down on the floor, we're going to look at it closer up, is a beautiful hit or miss hearth rug. And you can see in the next room, there's another, oh, hey, Doreen, there's another hearth rug next door. And this is Christy in the picture right behind him. We were like vultures right over his shoulder. It was just so much fun. Oops, wait a minute, I clicked on the wrong thing. Hang on, you know me. We were like vultures on a poop truck just over his shoulder, just looking, taking pictures like crazy. This is that rug we were standing right in front of. Beautiful, large hit and miss rug. What makes these hearth rugs is the size, right? Hearths were not standard, but we know that early American homes had really large open hearths, and often the rug in front of them would run the span of them. So this is an excellent example of a nice hit or miss rug. Really beautiful colors, a little bit faded. Let me see if in the next picture he's doing, yes, he is doing his thing. He said, I feel a bit naughty because normally I don't touch the textiles, but in the case of our tour, he wanted to show us the backs of the rugs because he knew it had interest for us to kind of gauge how much fading had happened. In this case, not that much fading. You can see the back is not that different from the front. It could be that over time in a lot of households, historical documentation and diaries support the fact that people would often flip their rugs over to save the good side for company days. So in that way, it is entirely possible that rugs would be equally faded front to back. So interesting in the case of this one because it looks quite discolored. It looks quite pale, but it's not. According to the back, it's pretty correct. Although this might have been flip-flopped for all of its years in service, right? Some of my pictures I didn't realize weren't quite in focus. I'm sorry about that. This is the hearth maybe in the next room. Almost every room, as you can imagine, in a house this age had a hearth. So this is a beautiful rug in front of the hearth. I'm going to show you this a lot closer up. But for those of you that are folk art enthusiasts, there's just so much stuff in this house to see. Your head is like spinning, like dervish style, just spinning. And it was just too much to take in. Even going as slow as we went. He was very good letting us go very slow. But it's like, I've been there, before, a couple of times, at least to this house too. And every time I go, I see something different because there's so much to see. Now, this is the rug we were just looking at in front of the hearth. It's not a hooked rug, and I bet some of you are already saying it and typing it. It is a shared rug, S-H-I-R-R-E-D, shared rug. And what that is, it's sometimes called a caterpillar rug, but in this case, it wouldn't be called a caterpillar rug. A shared rug is when you, I'm going to come back to you to show this, have a flat piece of fabric, whether it's wool or another material, and you ruche it, accordion it, right? And you sew it through to kind of pucker it, to gather it, to ruche it, and then you sew it in that finished form onto the rug. So you get a three-dimensional rug, but you're actually sewing something that you've already kind of altered and ruched onto the surface. It works obviously differently than a hooked rug. It is sewn with a needle. It is not done with a hook. And normally when we see ruched rugs, caterpillar rugs, shirred rugs, we see very narrow work. In this case, we see super wide work. And I found that really curious and interesting because I'm looking for my slide again where it is. I'm not going to come back to you too much tonight because it's hard for me to find where I was. Hold on just a second. You take a sip while I figure out where we were. Yeah, you're going to see not very much of my face in this show just because of this. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry. There we go. I got it. These are big wide strips, right? And you can see the strips are more narrow where they were doing work like with the stems. No, not quilling, because quilling would be like twisting it, spinning it. This is just accordioning it, like pleating it, like mini pleating. So it's really ruching it or sharing it, S-H-I-R, not S-H-E-A-R, is the right word. But it is a different kind of rug making. It is still very labor intensive and it requires a lot of sewing with a needle. So we don't see a ton of this kind of work out there. It's certainly not as much of it as we would see like a hooked rug or a punched rug. This is a close-up, and you can see in the close-up that the center of the flowers are hooked. The rest of it is shared. The centers are hooked, and they appear to be hooked and clipped, right? Because that's very, very even. Beautiful flower center. It looks like they went right through their backing, which was probably homespun. Well, you know, this flower is different, right? So if we come back to this one, this to me looks, with the exception of that kind of peppermint border, it looks completely hooked and clipped because you're seeing the cross section so flat, so even, so well. But with this other flower that I took a detail of, you do see some shirring in that flower, which does beg the question, is the other one hooked, or the rest of this one, or did it wear down to a nubbin? I don't know. I think that some of it is hooked, but it is hard to know. I didn't take a super close look at it, right? It was on the floor, and we were moving at a together. I didn't want to be suspiciously lingering, you know. But you are getting good close-ups in these pictures of what this kind of a rug looks like, and I really think it's an extraordinary example of this style. I have not seen a shared rug with sharing this wide before, and I thought that in and of itself is quite a novelty, and it's no wonder, right, that Nina would have wanted to buy this rug because she's a folk art expert with a lot of expertise in collecting old rugs. So this appealed to her as something worth having, and rightly so. It's quite a novelty. Now this is, I don't think this is a rug. I think this is just a textile tapestry, or might be a partly punched rug that was just draped over one of the staircases. So I took a picture of it because it was a beautiful textile, but it appears to be on some kind of woven backing cloth, and it might be that it's punched or hooked. I honestly didn't stop too long at this one. There was so much else to see. Linda Ann says, I wonder if the parts that are hooked are maybe where they are repaired. You know, that's entirely possible. They look very old. That's the only thing that makes me think that it's part of the original design. But I would have to have that rug up on a table, looking at it really closely to get some better clues. And I would really want to look at the back of it closely. I didn't want to touch any of the rugs. Michael was flipping them over, which was super gracious. But to answer some of the questions I had in my head, I would have had to flip them over and look at them for a little bit to get some better ideas. And sometimes it's just hard to tell, particularly with sewn rugs. The dead giveaway would have been if on the reverse, just the centers of the flowers, you could see the backs of the loops through it. Now I wish I would have asked them. But next time I go, I will ask if we can see the entire back of the rug to get a better feel for it. The more I look at this piece, the more I think it is hooked in a small cut on a woven backing. That's why it looks like a pattern, because it is not entirely hooked. The surface is not completely covered. But I thought it was a lovely enough piece to take a photo of. And here's Michael looking at another, he's got his little flashlight set up, another beautiful, very old 19th century rug. Down on the floor, I've got another photo to follow where he's going to flip it, and another beautiful footstool that just happens to go really well with this piece. As you can imagine, in a house like this, with this many collectors, there are lots of everything. With collectors, they collected specifically rugs, different kinds of lighting, lots of footstools. They had lots of pottery, lots of glass. They had specific collections within collections. So just beautiful. I'm sure I didn't even catch all of the hooked things that were scattered about. And they were living in the house. So for example, this piece of furniture is like a mid-century piece of furniture. They used it. They were using it in the house. And I think that's so interesting because you are seeing contemporary furniture. This was their TV room, and there was a TV in it. And they would sit on top of these beautiful rugs, all scattered all over the floor, using the footstools and with their contemporary furniture for comfort. But everything was there for them to enjoy. They were collectors and they meant to enjoy it. So it's just interesting to see the kind of juxtaposition of the new and the old in a house that was lived in. And it's an interesting angle. Let me see if this is a kind of pull away from this scene. So you're seeing this hearth, lots of beautiful painting on it. The rug we were looking at underneath, you can see there is a lovely Berlin work pillow, a needlepoint pillow on the left, like a sampler. That kind of collection of motifs is called like a Berlin sampler. But you can see they were very interested in not just furniture, but a lot of textiles. Um, and oh, another, I did a lot of everyone. I just wanted to be sure that we were covered, lots of different angles. I thought it was worth it, and I thought that you might want to be peeking around at the photographs, different things as well. These are two, I think these are two Theorum paintings, Theorum. This is another one of the classes that me and my mom did years ago, painting on velvet using stencils, kind of sequenced, right? You use one stencil with one color, and then you switch, you overlay it like you would a silk screen, add the next stencil with the next color, and the colors really don't often touch unless you are attempting to blend them. Theorum painting is just a beautiful old time way of painting, again, onto velvet. That's the key, or velveteen. So nice couple examples of that, and then like a beautiful foot bath down below. There was another foot bath that was quite similar at Cogswell Grant. These would have been like Asian imports back in the day. Really interesting and valuable things that if you were wealthy, you could have gotten, you could have collected. This is a beautiful pair of portraits. Portraits, again, were another thing that they collected. And a piece of pottery, and there was a small hooked piece on this table. So I thought, let me get a little picture of that too. Very geometric. I think I took a close-up of that. Well, I took a picture of the back of that. So this is not hooked. This is either prodded or sewn. But if you're a hooker, you can tell from looking at the back of this, it doesn't look like it's hooked. It looks like that was a needle that was drawing the fabric through the backing material. So you can see how confusing it can be for people who are new to hooking, new to collecting rugs. Sewn rugs from the front can look just like a hooked rug, but the pattern that it makes on the back is not the same. So this to me looks purely like a sewing pattern or a proddy pattern, but you can see from the front that it's not a proddy rug. Just another small piece that really stood out as being very pretty. This is not a rug reference, but Michael was standing in the corner next to this miniature four-poster bed. And I just had to get a picture of it because I remember him saying, I don't know if you remember, Mom, I feel like he said that this was like the only one of this, or it was like specific use in having made it. I don't know if anyone else is on tonight that was on the tour. He told a really interesting story about it. I was very preoccupied with jockeying to get a photo. That's the kind of pig that I was on this day. So I took a picture of it from the distance, and I wanted to take a close-up for you in case you're looking for inspiration. The little bedspread was all hand-done needlepoint, and this really caught my eye, this motif of this peacock. I thought, isn't this a gorgeous design? Maybe pause the video or rewatch the video later, make a sort of mental note of where we are, because this is just a beautiful design to transfer if you are into embroidery, cross-stitch, rug making, quilt making. There are so many things you could do with a lovely, simple design like this. It looks like one of those Pearl McGowan Jacobean designs, but it's really not, is it? It's very unique. I can't think of ever seeing this exact kind of motif. You see peacocks that look like this, but the fan is very geometric, and the different sort of rainbow use of the stitching, one to the next being sort of color-coded. I thought this was so cool and so different. Thought it was worth putting it into tonight in case it inspired anybody. This is another room of the house. I took some pictures as we went through because I wanted you to enjoy what we were looking at too. I'm sure I don't have it sort of in chronological order because it's hard to remember in retrospect. Lots of beautiful furniture. You notice the painting on the doors as well. This wasn't a particularly small home, but I think to us nowadays, the rooms are rather small, and I think perfectly so. But it is a crowded house. It would have been a very large house for the time that it was built, but there is a remarkable amount of stuff in the house. This is one of the downstairs rooms that was used as a bedroom. You can see by the style of bed, this is the original kind of, if you're looking at the rope at the bottom of the bed, good night, sleep tight, where you would use that wooden tool to turn like a windmill and tighten your ropes at night to get the most kind of support in your bed. This is a bed rug on top of the bed, and I'm going to show this to you close up. This is a remarkable bed rug. And on both the right side of the bed and the left side of the bed, there are hooked rugs. Just everywhere. They were just everywhere. So let's see what we can... This is a close-up of the bed rug. Now, Very cozy rooms, Karen. I mean, that is the word. I love being crowded with stuff, particularly when it's beautiful stuff. So this is like a heaven to me. Um, they also had an attic with like a no door on it, and you could kind of peek up and see. You couldn't go up there, and I do think Historic New England does give attic days, like tours where they do attic days. It's actually at night, so I've got to look for those myself. They give those in many of the homes, and I don't know if they give one at Cogswell Grant, but the idea is you go in the attic, and obviously it's a tour with a limited number kind of cap on it because lots of potential for trouble. But you could see right up into their attic, and you could see more stuff. And that night, I just dreamt about breaking in and going up into the attic because I just could not stop thinking about what might be up there. This is a close-up of the bed rug. And bed rugs were done because bed rugs are 18th century, right? And we talk about rug hooking coming in around 1860. That's the earliest possible date with all of the information that we have, which is a lot at this point. That is the earliest possible date that we can give it, but these are much earlier. So these are going to a maximalist heaven. Absolutely, Ryan. You better like coin that phrase right now. That is a good one. Make a Facebook page, make an everything page, put a copyright on that thing. Um, these bed rugs can be 100 years older than the oldest hooked rug, and these were made with a needle. So they look remarkably the same as hooked rugs, but they were made with a needle, so we cannot call them hooked rugs, but they were sewn rugs, and they are beautifully done. Let me show you some more. I took plenty of examples of this. Um, Different angles. The light was coming in on it. The light was really limited, as you can imagine. They control the temperature and the light because they have an eye to the future, right? This is the back. Michael is holding up the back of the rug, so you can see again this pattern of sewing rather than hooking. And it is the dead giveaway, but we know because it is a bed rug, we know the years that bed rugs ran, and I've done quite a few coffee time episodes on bed rugs, particularly when we went to see as a group the bed rug exhibit at the Florence Griswold House in Old Lyme, Connecticut earlier in the summer. Um, this is a whole conversation in and of itself, so I won't go too much into it. But bed rugs were massive and were often made for kind of the hope chest, dowry item that you would bring with you because the amount of material you would need to make something this size, it would have been a lot, right? Something that you would have to save up for. Often families would have to come together to get the material to make it possible to make a bed rug. And often dyeing would be involved. If you wanted any kind of a pattern, you had to try to control your darks and your lights and have plenty of each. So dyeing would come into play more often than not. This is a beautiful, mostly hit or miss piece that's on the side of the bed in the same room. It's more of a hearth rug style. It's not really a side of the bed rug. It is a hearth rug, but they are using it at the side of the bed, which makes a lot of sense. Nobody is using it now. It has kind of that quilt pattern, right? Kind of like the wedding ring pattern, but the rings are very prominent, but you are seeing a heavy hit or miss color design in the center, which is just luscious. But in contrast to that very sort of hazy hit or miss mizzy-mazzy center, it is a very structured border. Somebody really took pains to make sure there was plenty of that dark brown or dark bordering black. I'm not sure how faded this one is. And this pattern having the very light lights and this vine very consistent right around the rug. So while there is this strong sort of patterning to the border, the inside is like static on the TV, right? It was 1960s, 70s again. You're between those stations and it's all static. It's a neat rug because I think of that contrast. This is the rug on the other side of the bed, and I'm going to show you some more close-ups of this. It is a house rug. It is a nice early house rug with two apple trees. It is just lovely. 19th century rug, definitely an original pattern. A lot of color change and kind of filling in color where you could, right, for lack of having enough of one color. Very naive, very folky. This is the kind of rug that is very valuable these days. I shamelessly copied some of the rugs from this day, right? They are of an age where they are not under any kind of copyright, or they never were. These are all original patterns. So some of these rugs I thought were remarkable enough that I wanted to put them into a collection called the Cape Ann Collection on the Ribbon Candy Hooking site because I want to hook some of them. I thought maybe you wanted to hook some of them. So, sorry, I'm struggling with technology here. So for example, oh, wait a minute, that is not right. I might be missing a slide. Well, there is a picture of this rug coming up later, a drawing. This is one of the rugs that I drew and is now available on Ribbon Candy Hooking. Hopefully the slide is later. I know I, serious folk art, right, Karen? I know I accidentally deleted one slide. Might have been the one, who knows? So this is and it's there regardless. So this is another bedroom. This was actually the bedroom where they slept, right? As like an, aging couple, right? They have two little beds and this beautiful rug in between. I think I took a close-up of it. I love all their sort of homespuns that they're using as textile, as bed rugs and all of this kind of thing. There is a wire going across this. That's not a flaw. But I thought this is just a beautiful rug with a chain border. And we know rugs that this is a 19th century rug as well. Nina did not buy contemporary rugs. So this is very likely to be like a frost pattern, that kind of a thing. Because sometimes I think it's easy to forget that, I'm going to go on a little bit of a bender here. Sometimes when we look at rugs that are medallion rugs with florals and scrolls and things like that, we think Promogown 20th century. Well, those rugs are kind of celebrating much earlier rugs. For example, the Edward Sands Frost rugs that are very similar designs. So there is a revival of that style of scroll, medallion, very heavy floral rug, very heavy borders. There is a revival of that in the 20th century, but that's only because it had already happened in the 19th century. So this would be an example I would think of as Sands Frost style or Garrett style rug, that kind of an age. One of the things that's curious for me is the interlocking chain, because we know that rugs of this age, this chain either represents the Masons, right, the fraternal organization of the Masons, or sometimes the transatlantic cable. So it really depends on where exactly this rug would have fallen in the timeline of life to be able to know what this was a reference to. I'm sorry, not the Masons, the Oddfellows, not the Masons, the Oddfellows, right? That's a different fraternal organization. And very common, very popular. And we see a lot of chains that are a reference to, that would be going down in the floor of a house where there was a member of the Oddfellows. So very, very common at the time, but rarely see that kind of motif now, and it's exciting to find that linked chain. Just took a picture of Michael in front of this. I thought this was called redware, but it's all yellow, so I'm wondering if it's called yellowware or something different. There was a cord, Karen, going right down the middle of it. It was to a fan because it was so hot in there. It was like dangerous. But that was not a flaw on the rug. That was a cord so that we didn't drop dead. This is just him standing in front of this beautiful collection of pottery. And the littles would have changed this out on a regular basis. Can you imagine having so much of it that you would change it out on a regular basis? But the different things at different times. I love these chairs, by the way. I said to my mom when we were there, I just love the shape of them. They're so different. I think there were 6 or 8. They were so different. Now, this is another to be continued. Look at that wooden thing to the right of this display that's mounted to the wall. Take a good look at that. We're going to come to that shortly. That's its own conversation. So I took pictures in some of these little rooms. There were lots of little rooms and walk-in closets, believe it or not, that served as small offices and just storage rooms now, and I think also for the littles. But there were rugs here and there, and I wanted to take pictures of as many as I could. Oh, Suze, good to see you. We're hot too. We were saying we are terribly hot. You just reminded me how hot I am. I'm just gonna take a quick sip. Don't want to get overheated, right? Just another beautiful, this is like a square rug, very unusual dimension, hit or miss background, series of borders, and just a very simple floral. This is something you could achieve by folding a paper in half, cutting it, tracing it, boom, there you go. There's your design. Grab a piece of charcoal from the fire, draw it onto your backing, and just start going, right? This is that age of rug. Again, these are all 19th century rugs. This is more of its sort of oriental rug, right? So this would have been an import rug for those who could afford it, probably 18th, 19th century rug. But I took a picture of it because there was a beautiful woven bedspread, like an overshot bedspread on top, and I just thought it was a nice texture shot with this step up, old painted wood, right? Everywhere your eye could fall, there was such beauty. There was so much to look at. And again, I had been in this house before, and it was like I was in feast or famine mode, just searching, panicked to get photos of everything. This is a pretty, a very unusual palette for a rug this age. Again, it looks like it could be a 20th century rug. It's earlier. It has that lovely, what we call now marble cake background, that light color. You don't see a lot of that because not many people had, this is wool, any material that was light, right? If you were like of a working class where you would be making a thrift rug, right, a thrifty homemade rug, chances are you didn't own a lot of light clothing. You'd owned dark clothing because it would get constantly dirty. If you were of an upper class, you had a lot of light clothing. But if you were of an upper class, would you be making a hook rug? Probably not. Bordering on definitely not. So finding these early rugs with this light background is unusual and lucky. And that's probably why she wanted that. Now this is an odd picture. Just try to get your eye around this. I'm walking you into that wooden thing that was hanging on that wall. It's called a tape loom. I mentioned this in coffee time the other morning. And this is the tape, right? This is a photo of it inside a Ziploc so people could look at it. This is a photo of an illustration of a tape loom. Tape looms can go back to the 17th century. They are very collectible. The problem with tape looms is when people find them, including myself until Michael, they don't know what they are. So tape is actually what the tape is here in the bag. This is an old piece of tape off a tape loom. The tape is actually that twill, like the cotton twill that we use now still for our for binding our rugs. They made it then on a tape loom. So there were some examples. This is an example of a tape loom, and you can see part of the handle is broken off. I think you would put that part between your legs and hold it like a loom, hold it upright, pull it upright, and the pressure of the strings as they were woven in, you'd be knotting it as you go, almost like modern bracelets that girls make, right? If you've ever seen little girls making like braided bracelets, they make them on a little loom. The idea is very similar to a tape loom. When I saw this, I thought cutting board, cheese, pill roller, right? You know, they used to roll pill and grooves, because pills and grooves like at the apothecary because they were made of like a clay material, not a hard or powder material. But no, it's a tape loom. And Michael told us all about this because this one's out of focus. I'm sorry. It was in the next room and I zoomed in. It's just another one with a textile hanging in front of it. Not a good photo. But, and here's another one, very, very dark. But there were three. There were three tape looms. This is one that's hanging next to the display of all of the pottery. But they're just beautifully shaped, really gorgeous pieces of folk art. And I thought so curious to know that people were making tape from, by hand, right? So then we walked into, I think this was the upstairs bedroom, this enormous rug. It was hard to get a picture of it because it was the entire floor. I took many photos of it piecemeal, and we were trying to sort of jockey. Also, we were all standing there with our blue, things on our shoes, trying to get out of the way and not stand on the rug if possible. And it was also covered with a lot of furniture. But this rug is unbelievable. And the interesting thing, let me move to some other photos of it. The interesting thing is that there are lots of parts to it. And at first glance, it's likely to you're likely to think, well, they ran out of color. They kept running out of color. Michael told us something that I have never heard before. He said that a rug this size, and it was massive, it was probably 15 foot by 15 foot, that many men would have been working on this. This would have been a commercial rug that was ordered, very, very old, 19th century, but different people would have been working on different parts of it so it could be completed quickly. And thus you get a lot of different patterns, a lot of different colors. Now, I have never heard this before, so this is something I would like to research, but you can see it's in the style of a rug of its age, but you can see they're partitioning off different parts of the rug. And I'm thinking, according to what Michael said, that one person is working on this, someone is working next to them furiously on the same backing to get it done, because they would have pre-sold rugs of this size, and you'd have to get it done by the deadline, or the person might say, never mind. But it was a massive rug. He's over on the side of it here, and you see it did have a border, and it seemed to be all the same backing. It's possible it was pieced, but it seemed to be all one piece of backing. That would have been something right off a loom, as wide as possible, because of course with this kind of a business situation, you would have first discussed what size do you want? What colors do you want? When do you need it by? And then people would have been hired, and he said it would have been men in businesses like this, and they just would have been working on it as quickly as possible until it was done and delivered. And right next to it is another really beautiful rug, much smaller, with very heavy geometric, with just a small floral border, motif that was out of sequence. But this is another look at that larger rug in the same room. Just a spray of flowers and medallions, kind of wreathing off different parts. I mean, I would love to hear more about this kind of a dynamic where multiple people are working at the same time, and there really isn't an overall pattern. They're just working it as they go. Because again, this kind of idea is new to me. I have not heard this before. It almost looks camouflage in the background, all of the color changes that are happening. I would love to know how this worked, right? Because there's lots of beautiful leaves, there's flowers mixed in. I would love to know whether it was like, Archie, could you hand me over some light blue, right? If it was that kind of a thing. Because it's hard to picture. It's also hard to picture the setting that this would have been taking place in. I included this picture only because when we walked by this extraordinary piece of 17th century furniture, it looked like it was a one color dark piece, and when he shone a light on it, you can see there is 17th century hand painting on it still. Beautiful old hardware. This is an old piece, and somebody painted it way back when, and the painting is still there, and honestly, you could not see any of it until he shone a light, and then it was like a hologram, like, oh my God. Ryan said, very cool to have so many hands working on the one piece. Absolutely. And so interesting, too. I'm going to remember we're on number 92. Here comes my face. So interesting because I know I talk from time to time to the family of Priscilla Turner Rugs, right, in Maine, because I'm working on a project with them to get that history documented. And I know that Patricia, who I talked to, her dad owned the company, and he never let more than one person work on these huge rugs that were commissioned for offices, same kind of thing in the 20th century, right, like in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. But they did massive rugs. But her dad realized that when more than one person was working on the rug, that even though it was exactly the same color, same batch, same everything, the hooking was a little, they were punching. The punching looked a little different from woman to woman. And he very early on said, only, no matter what the size is, only one person working on the rug. And we adjust the timeline for delivery accordingly, because he said you could always see where one person ended and the next person began. And with rugs that were meant to be very uniform, that were destined for the White House, one of them, very sort of expensive, busy office spaces, department stores, they had to be absolute perfection, right? It was not about the folky, naive craft of rug making. It was about perfection and having something that looked like it was factory made. So interesting, because that is such a departure from what we were looking at, a rug that looks like almost intentionally a complete patchwork of many busy hands. I just think it's so interesting. And let me come back here. Sorry, I'm looking for where we are. There we are. All right. I did a lot of these texture shots because a lot of the rooms he let us in, like I said, oh, hey, Crystal, good to see you. Happy Friday. A lot of the rooms he let us in were basically closets, and they were not open to the public. And I felt like I had a duty to take pictures of every single thing I could in case they're not open to the public again anytime soon. This was just a beautiful kind of family tree, a variation on a family tree painted canvas that was in a storage room. And I just took a quick picture of it because I thought, interesting. If you look at this in terms of a motif, if you're a designer or an aspiring designer, this is a great idea. It's not exactly a family tree, but if you look in the kind of tied knot underneath, there are names there, and it looks like there's a homestead. It's not Cogswell Grant, but it could be like a village, or it could be two houses united. It could be two completely separate properties. And you see as the scrolls go up, there are scrolls, like feathering scrolls, rather than the actual tree with names on them. And I thought, interesting take. It's a painting, but interesting take on a family tree. It doesn't necessarily have to be a family tree. It's super flowering and beautiful. Hey, Lynn, good to see you. You slept the afternoon away. That sounds very sensible. It's better than suffering through the heat. I don't know how you're making it. I hope you got the fan blasting you right now, right in the face, right? Good to see you, Lynn. I'm sorry it's so warm. This is another thing that was in the closet that I had to take a picture of. It's like a carved fish, and I just thought, man, that thing has so much character, doesn't it? It's just so different. And I know a lot of you are folk art enthusiasts. I almost died when he shone a light on this. This is a 19th century jack-o'-lantern, and they know that for sure. And that is so unlikely because we know that Halloween as a holiday really came in starting in the 1920s. So as like, I don't want to say a pagan day because that's like gives it a discredit, right? The idea of celebrating Halloween and how close the worlds are to each other on this particular evening is a known thing. And it's not a witch thing, right? It's just, it's not a mainstream Christian thing, but it is a known thing through centuries. So the idea of celebrating Halloween at this time of year is a known thing. But you get very little merch, right? Merchandise in the 19th century. This is extraordinarily, this is like a metal, like a tin pumpkin. This is exceptionally early because if you think about it, and I know I've said this before, but if you haven't been with me long, do you remember the movie Meet Me in St. Louis? And do you remember the Halloween scene? Because that beautiful movie with Judy Garland spans the year, right, leading right up to the Louisiana Exposition. That's the highlight of the movie at the end. But there is a scene in the fall, and they do Halloween. And remember, little Tootie goes out, and they are really replicating what Halloween in the late 19th, early 20th century was like, where you wouldn't really dress in a costume. Like they were dressed like in their parents' clothes. Like, you know, the boys were dressed in like their mother's dresses and padded out the boobs and everything. It was like they were dressed weird, but not necessarily scary. And they had fake noses and mustaches, and they drew their faces with charcoal and stuff. And they just looked like kind of a mishmash of weirdness, but not any specific character. So it's just funny to me that knowing what the Halloween timeline is like, to see a piece like this, it just took my breath away. Because you do get a lot of stuff in the 1920s, 1930s, and right through the 20th century. But things of this age, and this is in the storage closet, so this is not on display. You know, I didn't think to ask Michael whether in other seasons they do have that out in the house. I hope they do. This is more closet stuff. I'm sorry. We're going to get back to rugs, but it was so closety. I could not resist. They collected these like old-time store mannequins. Ryan, I love the jack-o'-lantern too. And you know, you see that round face, right? Oh, good morning, Gail in Australia. Great to see you. You see that jack-o'-lantern face, but to really see it that old, like done in metal, that's like the germ of the idea that we then ran with in the 1930s and 40s. But they also collected these heads from stores, like your local country store, where they would display like headgear and painted ones. So these are like a slightly different eras, but these are both serious antiques, super expensive, and currently being stored. Again, when you have this much stuff, it's hard to display it all. This was over the door. That's Carol. She came from Clinton, Connecticut that day. This is like not a stave, but if you look at the edges of it, this is a beautiful painted piece that you might want to stop and zoom into like later, or a screenshot or something. It's definitely worth looking at. Copyright-free material for you here. This was taken off a piece of furniture, and they don't know what. Possibly a chest, a bed, something obviously massive. And it was pegged in such a way that it was attached to something else, right? So it was three-dimensional. But it's just a beautiful, very folk art painting. And it's a house on the left, connected to a little bridge. Everything is out of scale. Like there's a cow as soon as you cross the bridge, and there's a clipper ship under the bridge. If you see that little dot, that's actually a clipper ship. A bit out of proportion, but of course with folk art, the main things that you're looking for with authentic folk art are actually the absence of, a lack of perspective and proportion. Those are two things that you want. So the little bridge leads to this on the right hand side, that pretty yellow tavern, and the tavern is so old. It would be one of these old stagecoach taverns. And if you see right to the left of the tavern, there's a sign. And I couldn't make out what the sign was because it was very high up on the wall, and I'm very small. So it was way up there, but it looked like it might have been an owl or something. And it harkens back to the days when people could not read in general. And if you wanted to go to the tavern and you say, "Where am I meeting you tonight?" you'd say, "At the sign of the White Owl." And they would know exactly what you meant. They would not write the White Owl on the tavern because nobody would have been able to figure it out. So this is old enough that it refers to the days of tavern signs and in general street signs and business signs, where there was no text at all. That's how old this thing is. And in the same closet, another one of these head things, this one in much more serious disrepair, but just part of their collection that I thought was interesting. I just couldn't stop looking at these combs. This is a tortoise carved comb, right? That sort of kind of thing that you put your hair up in a bun and then stick it in the back, and it would be sticking up from the back of your head. The larger, the better, right? Tortoise, great. Silver, even better. Jewels, even better. Good, better, best, right? So all these interesting things that women would have had and would have been a special language at that time. This is another storage room item, a bit out of focus, but again, this is an early scroll. So this is not a Promogown era scroll. This is a 19th century. Even the stool next to it had a hooked piece on it, but you can see kind of the vacuum laying on the left. There were lots of peeks into places, and I was trying to be quick about getting my photos because there was lots of us. I didn't want to be the only pig who was standing in the door. My hands were shaking for a good part of the tour because I was very excited. So I took a lot of very sketchy shots. This is just another room downstairs in their house, but again, beautiful painted furniture and those boxes, right? Those band boxes up top, the shaker style boxes. Nina Fletcher Little did a book specifically on early American boxes. So if this appeals to you, look for her book online. It is always there. It is reasonable. I have it. It's a wonderful look at that moment in history. I took pictures of things like this. Again, maybe you're inspired. Maybe you know what these are, but I have never heard of this. They also had a collection of painted ostrich eggs. They were both painted and carved. Now, if you're asking, where does one get an ostrich egg? I don't know. Obviously, they were available, and the ones that are not painted are carved. Like some of the veneer of the actual shell has been cut and the egg has survived. So I don't know a lot about ostrich eggs, but you can see on the top three in the middle on the top row, and then the bottom row, the left skip, middle skip, skip, right, those are carved. I mean, I just thought that was extraordinary. And if you are the kind of person who loves jumping down rabbit holes into the warren of lost arts, this is maybe something to research, because I just thought there's going to be some good basis for design on these painted and carved ostrich eggs. Alicia, great to see you. Welcome. Oh, good to see you. Happy Friday. Lots of this stuff too. Remember, this is old stuff. If you like the color, if you like the pattern, use it. Take it. Design with it. Dave, great to see you. What is everyone drinking? You've got rye, whiskey, and ginger ale. Oh, that sounds so good. I just have plain old wine tonight. Cheers, my dears. Good to see you in Toronto. I just love this kind of painting. I mean, isn't it just something to look at this and imagine 17th century, imagine someone doing this, like just sitting there with a brush, right? It's very loose brush. It looks very dry. Oh, a genius says, I have a carved emu egg. There you go. It's a thing, right? Is it a new one, Eugenia, or is it an antique one, like an oldie? I mean, I'm just blown away that this is a thing. I've seen like eggs, like the Ukrainian painted eggs and stuff, but just the idea of carving into it was just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. I got to speed up a little bit. There was, just as a house this age would, all of the downstairs rooms are meant for entertaining. Different people, different classes of different people. Gail's got tea because it's breakfast. Rum and Coke. Oh, that sounds nice too. Now I'm jealous. All of the games were set up on these old gaming tables, right? So you've got this looks like what, chess? There was like checkers and different games set up in different places, but you can see they've got this beautiful, I'm sure very valuable, painted game board on top of another beautiful hooked rug. I did not ask Michael to move this, of course. It must have a medallion of flowers in the middle. But again, I was just trying to take as many pictures as I could of everything hooked. Another beauty in front of a painted chest of drawers, and big hit or miss center. The whole center is hit or miss, but as you can see, it's got a few borders on it, and also in the corners, a little bit of checkerboard. You see there's some color change in the checkers because probably ran out. Oh, Eugenia says, it's new. I got it for Mother's Day 2 years ago. How beautiful, Eugenia. If you're in the Facebook group, make sure you post it. I think you are. I'd love to see what that looks like. Alicia says, I was cooking homemade bread and beef stew. Oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh, I haven't had dinner yet. That sounds amazing. Well, it's here for you later, Alicia, and you are in it now. I hope you're having your bread and beef stew. That sounds absolutely amazing. Oh, that sounds great. Oh, same thing, right? Same table, but I wanted you to see this picture behind it because I was looking at this going, this frame was so deep that they lined up this little collection of like little wooden soldiers on one side and on the other side this beautiful little wooden house. I just thought, man, everywhere your eye looks is something so whimsical and valuable, right? It was just like ostentatious, but not. I mean, they were true collectors and scholars. And the amount of writing, academic work that they did in all of their fields of collecting is just remarkable. This is like a beautiful gate leg table that would open up. See in the middle panel how small it could be if it wanted to. Opened up for games, some kinds of a marble. I don't know what that marble game is, but a beautiful hooked rug in the center, a little textile fan, what looks like some wax or alabaster fruit, all kinds of collections happening here. Um, I hope that if you ever go to Massachusetts that you will visit these two houses because particularly if you like folk art and you like rugs, this is for you. Beautiful old tea caddy, right, going right back to the tea coffee trade of the 18th century, on top of this Waldoboro hooked rug with a braided border, right? This was not a super high relief, but it definitely was, there was relief. It was Waldoboro without a doubt. Little carved hand mirror, but look at all those very delicate rows of sort of chenille braiding around the edges of it. Let me see if I have another picture of that one. I thought that was just remarkable. That's the back of it. I thought that was just remarkable. I'm going to go a little bit faster. That is the same rug. I was just pulling back a little bit so you could see the vignette a little bit better. I'm going to speed up a little bit. And then I took pictures like this because I thought, God, is that beautiful or what? Just a simple, simple little portrait. But look at that sky, the tree line, so simple. Just classic. Just classic. I tried to get some pictures of the texture in the house too. I took this one for myself. You know, I just live for these little homemade villages. I just loved this one. It was in crazy pastel colors. The whole village with these, all hand carved, right? With like the church, two churches, I think. I do collect little hand carved churches. That's so specific, isn't it? I think there's 3 churches there. But this really got me. The colors and just the display of it really got me. Bucket list destination. Crystal, I know you'll tell me when you do, because we will certainly be in tandem. We must be in tandem for those good times. Now, this is the rug of the house, right? This is the rug I think that most people who are interested in rug hooking have seen before. It is just remarkable. This is the lion rug. We've covered this on Coffee Time because we've seen it. I've taken pictures of it before. It is just remarkable. This rug gets deservedly a lot of attention because it is just an off the charts unique piece. So this is here at Cogswell Grant. That's where you can find it. It is always on the floor there. People are not really stepping on it. They're stepping on that huge woven rug in the background. He did make the point that with these woven rugs, that's the stripy one in the back, with these woven rugs, you know, when people are touring, I think it's very natural to step all over the woven rugs because you think, well, it's just a striped rug, in an effort to not step on the hooked rugs. And for that reason, the woven rugs get really worn down. So it was just hard to figure out. Yeah, your favorite, Courtney, right? I know. And guess what? I got it together and I put it up on ribbon candy hooking. So I'm working on it too. But instead of, for the one I did on ribbon candy hooking, this was a lot of floral for my own taste. And as I'm hooking it myself, I put it with palm leaves or palmetto leaves around it. So this, just so you know, this is, oops, I'm sorry, one of the rugs that is available. That's the one that I drew. No, oh, that's the house I was looking for earlier. Remember the little house with the 2 trees? That's the image I was looking for earlier. But that one is up, and hang on, I'm going to come back to you. I started mine. I didn't get too far because I'm working on like 3 projects right now. But I was using the swatch set that I made called Songs of a Summer Night. I love the color palette, and I was looking for the right thing. So I've got my guy on here, and I think I'm going to make the panther character the same color as in the rug, but around the edges where I've got all, see, I liked it a bit more deco around the edges than such a fussy floral. And of course, like I said to Courtney the other day, this rug is old, right? This is not something under copyright. So if you like it with the flowers on it, then you can absolutely blow up the picture, bring it to Staples, trace it, transfer it, and all that stuff. There's no reason why you shouldn't and can't, because it is not in copyright, right? And you are welcome to use my photo to work off of. I absolutely don't mind at all. I'm trying to come back to where we were. Hold on a second. I'll give my voice a bit of a rest. I should have split this tonight because I got to stop coming to you. That's the thing. As we know. Wait a minute. I should have shouted out what number we were on so that you could have helped me get back to where we once belonged. Hold on. Sorry about this. Everybody take a sip. I thought we were in the 90s. Good Lord. All right, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wow, we have a lot of photos. Okay, hold on. I'm doing it. I'm scrolling. Honestly, I wish you could see what I have to deal with here, with knowing what I'm like with all of these controls. It's like I'm a DJ, you know, except I'm obviously not. All right, hang on. We're getting there. We're getting there. Next time I'm going to shout out what slide we're on, because it's a tiny symbol next to the slide that tells me that's where we're at. I wonder if I'm just going to have to move on. Now I'm panicking because I'm not seeing it. How can I not be seeing it, honestly? Let me just get a feel for. Oh, that's my mom at the next house. Sorry, Mom. That was out of sequence. I got it. I got it. I just went by it again. There we go. Holy mackerel. I'm not coming back to you, I promise. That's too painful. So this is the other one that, let me see. They got to redo this board, I'm telling you. That's the other one that's up there. So that is the end of our Cogswell Grant. We got in our cars. Weirdly, almost everybody was driving a red car. I was not. But it was easy for us to follow. Me and my mom were following like the cavalcade of cars because they were all red. There was like 4 or 5 red cars in front of us. It was quite funny. The person who I made the arrangements with for us to do these 2 house tours in tandem as like a 1-ticket deal was leading us in her red car. So we made our way over to Beauport, which is also known as the Sleeper McCann house. Beauport refers to the area because Beau, of course, means beautiful, and port is the port. It is right on the harbor. Sleeper McCann refers to the man who owned the house, who was, in the 1920s, what is considered one of, if not the first, by profession, by occupation, interior designer. And he was also a Hollywood set designer. So this was his house that he bought. It was a much smaller house. He added lots onto it, in many cases to use as kind of a showroom. Oh, I have this out of place. This was the last photo that we took at Cogswell Grant together before we went over to Beauport. And obviously the water. There's the Beau. There's the Beau part of the Beauport. He added lots to it over the years. And every time, he was very, very wealthy. Every time he had a new idea, it was like he added a new part to the house so he could create a room that represented the sort of experiment of trying that new idea. He had a really interesting life. He was a gay man. He lived with his mother, friends constantly visiting, in a real hornet's nest of artists, other artists. They were all feeding off of each other. They were so, it was such an inspiring group. This, it was called the Neck, the Eastern Point. These painters and very, very well-known people. His next-door neighbor was a person, I forget what his name was, but he was credited with starting the Red Cross, right? And he was like also a young man. Just interesting histories right here in this neighborhood. But lots of parties in this house, lots of celebration, lots of wealth, but also they were working. You know, they were all working on their own stuff and so talented, each one of them. When you first walk into the house, the first thing I saw was the Sailor's Valentine. It's a double, so beautiful. We talk about Sailor's Valentine sometimes because they, oh, Linda Ann, it is so beautiful. We'll go together when you visit for sure. They're so beautiful, and I talk about them when we talk about Ralph Cahoon. When we've talked about Cape Cod, we sometimes talk about Sailor's Valentines in those episodes. You go into Beauport, and the house is basically, he collected collections. And one of his favorite was hooked rugs. So we're looking at 100 plus more hooked rugs at this location. It seems impossible, and yet they're here. He collected so many things, and glass was one of them. And it's interesting to note, if you're looking into the background here, and you're seeing that beautiful lit up display window, that was a built-in window, boxed out into dead space in the wall, and it actually has no light. It opened up, they busted through, created this space that was painted white, and there was a skylight above it. So it's natural light coming down and reflecting, right? So that it looks like it's a lit display case. He does this several times in several different rooms of the house. But it was an ingenious early way of lighting something without using light bulbs. Super ingenious. But his collection of amber glass in this piece and a beautiful hooked rug down on the floor, a lovely geometric with a little bit of a floral touch. It's so unusual to see this kind of lacy center with a small geometric diamond going into a second motif, floral, and then going back to the geometric. Now, sometimes you get like a geometric border with a floral motif in the center or vice versa, but you don't often see a geometric feeding into a floral, feeding back into a geometric. And having seen this as an example, it makes me think this is quite successful, isn't it? And if you did it in reverse and you did a floral border with a geometric middle and then back to a floral medallion in the center, I think it would likewise be very successful as a design idea. So I just thought, wow, something to think about, right? Look at that bench in the background. All this bamboo he's got in this house was just giving me stomach cramps because I just love bamboo. I took pictures like this too so you could get a feel for all of, this is all super early furniture. He did a lot of salvage in his day. Like nobody was like driving around the countryside like he was, looking at houses that were about to fall down. He was sometimes buying properties just to be able to salvage the windows, doorways, architectural details of these beautiful early American houses, saving the wood paneling, saving the door frames, the pilasters, the entrances that are only present in these early American homes. He was driving around with his friends collecting, taking whole pieces and whole walls out of properties that were falling down and rescuing them and bringing them and installing them, making them an architectural feature in this house. And every room of this house has a different feature. This is like a tavern feeling room, a very early American tavern room with the biggest hearth I've ever seen. I'm going to take a quick sip. And you can see beautiful collection of benches, a lot of different kinds of early lighting, beautiful brick, and then look at that nice circle rug under that long stool. Isn't that something? And again, he lived in these houses, in the house back in the day. The interesting thing about that, I'm not going to leave you again because then I won't be able to find my way back. But the interesting thing about this house is that David Sleeper McCann lived in it, right? And it went from being a very small house to being a sprawling property with lots and lots of rooms and secret passages. It's just, it's my favorite house ever. Cogswell Grant second, House of the Seven Gables in Salem third. They all happen to be on Cape Ann. That includes Europe. These houses are remarkable. So he lived in the house, and when he died, the house was slated to have everything go up for sale because his brother inherited it, and he could not afford it. So he was going to, out of necessity, sell everything piecemeal and thus sell the house. Luckily, I forget the family name. I think it's McCann because I think it's David Sleeper or Henry David Sleeper, and then I think it's the McCanns. I think that's how it is. You might want to check me on that if you're like taking notes or something, but I think he was Sleeper and the McCanns are the next family who take it. The wife of Mr. McCann was a Woolworth, the heiress of Woolworths. So she had unlimited funds. And I have to come back to you for this story because it's such a tearjerker. 123, that's the number we're on. She came to look at the house like on a lark. This is what the tour guide told us. I think this is one of the great stories of history of all time. She came to see the house on a lark, and she completely fell in love with it the way it was. And she could afford to say, I will take the house and all of the contents. Don't touch anything. I'm buying it all. And she did. And it turned out that she bought the house and thus saved the house with the contents exactly the way they always were, lived in the house for a short time, and died, and left the house to Historic New England, which then was SPEANA, right? Same organization, but they've changed names over the years, changed acronyms, and leave it to them. So she only lived, I want to say, 2 or 3 years before she died. And it's almost like one of her main jobs in life was to save this piece of history, because I can't think that anyone else could have afforded to have bought the house and would have wanted to keep it the way that it was. She changed one room of the house to be more to her taste for entertaining, and that's the china room. I don't even think I have a picture of it because it's not as nice a room as the others. I may have a picture at the end. But I thought that was one, two, three. I thought that was just remarkable. That it was almost like divine sort of intervention, right? Just like an angel blasting through 1920s. She buys the house, she saves the house, she wills the house. It is now protected. I just thought that was remarkable. I also think it's remarkable how fine these circles are, right? These are like so well done for a 19th century rug, an early rug. Here's my mom standing in one of these downstairs rooms. There's not wood paneling in all of the rooms. He likes the early American look because, of course, this is the era of colonialism as a decorating style, and he's a decorator. So making things in the colonial style he loves. But notice the amount of rugs on the floor in these harness bells. He collected harness bells too. In these pictures, braided rugs, but mostly hooked rugs. I love this braided rug. I love the center of it. I braid a little bit. If you braid too, look at this and think, this could be a great idea, right? Because you're just doing the straight across, which is hard because it's a lot of lacing in the center, but then you start doing your rounds around it. I haven't seen one exactly like that before, and I was blown away. This I see more of like 3 separate compartments that you just start to work around together. But the braided rugs were also, I thought, exceptional and worthy of remarking upon. One of the hooked rugs. I mean, my God, talk about a good mix of geometric and floral. Very undersized medallion on this one. Unusual, right? We don't usually see the scale. For whatever reason, the central motif, maybe it was someone who was just learning, maybe it was somebody who started with the center and thought, no thanks, and just moved to the geometric border. But it is a very, in terms of scale and proportion, very undersized central motif. I think it gives it some of its charm. It is a fairly naive piece. There is an attempt to do some shading on the flowers. It's very folky, which is my favorite kind of shading, a more graphic, right, approach than true 100 colors in one petal shading. It's much more naive than more recent rugs that would be a similar style. And certainly the scrolls, if you look at the attempt at the scroll, it doesn't exactly look like a scroll, does it? It's like somebody remembered, I think I know what a scroll looks like, and they drew it. And it's kind of what a scroll looks like. It's not as much of a Baroque affair as most scrolls, right? It's very, very simple, and you can tell the person's kind of struggling with the design part of it. And maybe they just did the center and they thought, forget about the rest of the flowers. I'm doing diamonds. But the diamonds are so beautiful, and they have some sameness of color in trying to outline with reds, rusts, and browns to get the diamonds to pop. And it does look like it's an unlimited color palette, but if you look again, it's not. There's lots of yellows. They obviously had a lot more yellow to do more of the center, and they put the yellow around the center, almost like they were trying to get a feel for how long it would last. And then they kind of did, you see on the right and on the left, there are straight down patterns of forest green. So I get the impression that they were looking at quantities of material they had. There's a lot of patterned wool in there too. If you see, like, let me see if there's another one of this same rug, maybe closer up. Yes, this is the back of it too. You can see there's some patterned wools in here. You can see they were attempting to do some kind of a pattern, maybe not realizing how much material it takes to hook, how much it eats up. And they ended up doing kind of a more random pattern. This is the same room because you can see the polka dot rug, but just a different view. You can see the miniature skillets hanging on top of the hearth and some of the other things that he collected here. I'm looking at that candle thing and thinking, how does that work? But that's a conversation for another day. I think this was an enormous room. Another small braided rug, a circular rug, just beautiful furniture. This is all old stuff. Lots of built-ins here too. Now that is the rug. That's Barbara. That was Brenda's sister who came with us, standing there looking at some of these rugs. She's standing in front of the rug we were just talking about. Closer to us is that very unusual pattern for a braided rug, and to the left in front of the hearth is that polka dot rug. So all of the rugs we've seen so far have been in this one room, but it is a vast room. I think we're headed to the other side of the room now with this really old-time lamb's tongue / scallop rug, and there's that braided rug that we just looked at. This is a close-up of the scallop rug. This is one of these eternal patterns, right, that became very popular for upholstery too. Going right through the 1980s, you see a lot happening with clamshell scallop patterning. But this is a great design because you can do it hit or miss, and it will work. And this is an interesting example because we sometimes do see this. Colleen just did one of these recently in our group on Facebook, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club, where the sides, right, looking at it the long way, the two sides, those clamshells are pointed in. And then in the middle, there is one row in the middle that falls between those two motifs. So it's sometimes you see a lamb's tongue that goes from bottom to top, and it's all one direction, directional. But this one is two directions, right, because it's coming in from both sides. So if you are ever going to attempt to do this kind of a motif, that's the first thing you want to ask yourself is, do I want it to be directional, or do I want it to come in from two sides or four sides? And then you just have to plan for that. This was a very common homemade pattern going right through the 20th century because Pearl McGowan tells us in her book, which one is it? The Dreams Beneath the Design, I think it is. She talks about people doing these kinds of patterns back in the day using a postcard that you would receive in the mail, right? Everybody sent each other pretty postcards, and you would just be moving the postcard along diagonally. And in doing so, with the grain of the fabric, right? But you would be moving the postcard and tracing it as you went. So you could make something that looked like brickwork, or you sometimes see these, but the bricks are much fatter, much taller, right? Much bigger, more squared bricks. And it's probably because they were doing the whole postcard as they went. This looks more like subway tiles. They're just moving it a little bit, and it really does look like brick. But whoever made this rug, it's absolutely beautiful. There is a distinct pattern. And they knew that they were able to make the pattern, maybe by getting help with some dyes. It looks like they had a lot of light and neutral fabric, and they were able to over dye the darker parts to get the greens and the blues. I just thought that was just remarkable. And the tour guide in this house also, Beauport, flipped over a lot of the rugs for us, which I thought was really handy because it gives us an idea of the fade, and there is really no fade on this. You know, judging from the way this house looks, you can see that David Sleeper, I'm hoping that's the name, I feel like it's David Henry Sleeper, kept it dark, right? There are some rooms that he didn't, but the rooms with 20 hooked rugs, I'm not exaggerating, on the floor, are kind of dark rooms. They're dim all the time because he understood that they would fade if they were hit directly with the sun. So a lot of the pictures I'm getting are quite dim, and the reason the rugs are still so beautiful is because he was cognizant of the fact that if they weren't saved this way, they would be lost. Here's another example of an absolutely beautiful rug. You have to work for it. You can see a shaft of light, interior light coming through, but a very dark corner of a room. I love this rug because it's got a very stiff central motif, almost like weather vane feeling, with rods of plants coming through, right? You see these rods with leaves at the end, and really kind of a regular placement of leaves and flowers. And then on the border, these kinds of Jack and the Beanstalk scroll leaves coming up. Like they're trying to decide if they're a leaf or a scroll, kind of rising up. Massive in comparison to the floral motif. Very unusual, very different. It was very hard to get a picture of this rug. We had to move very fast in this house because it has like something like 200 rooms. We didn't go to all of them, and they're not all open to the public, but we had to move quite fast, and we all wanted pictures of the same rugs. I would have loved to have stood there for a minute and let my camera take a slow, one of those slow photos that gets more color, but we just couldn't. It's something that I'll certainly go back for again. This one's a little bit out of focus. I'm sorry about that. Just a beautiful, this is, I think, the favorite room of the house. It is very Art Deco, Karen. One of the bedrooms, this is kind of this jadeite green. I have more photos of it, but remarkable rug. It has kind of a strawberry, these are not strawberries, these are roses, but a really beautiful color palette. I think this is considered, that's the rug. I think this is considered one of the two favorite rooms of the house, or at least the top three. I just love this because whoever made it, I love the white border with that, all the different colors of black in the outer, the edge of it. The inside is just, it reminds me like of a container of potpourri sitting out with all of these like folded up buds and these like dusty rosy colors, lots of different things. it's just so beautiful. But there's, I don't think, a single one of them that they've had enough kind of color to complete. So it's very patchy, each one of these flowers, and it creates, for me, so much interest. I must have taken some other picture. Oh, we're going to end up back in that room because I know I took other pictures in that room. This was another exceptional one for me. Now, I'm going to say, let me take another sip. Simple geometric. You know, I didn't peel any of these patterns for the shop, and I can. If there's like a demand for them, I will. I would say to you, if you are interested in rugs like this that are just straight up geometrics, don't spend money on buying a pattern from somebody. Just literally get your backing fabric and a Sharpie and start drawing lines. If you've got one of those quilting rulers, the thick, wide ones that you can see through, they're like 4 inches wide, you can do this in 15 minutes. But tracing this kind of a design onto backing is not something that I would do with a pattern. I would be too worried. I would do a few guidelines for myself if I was sending it to somebody to sell, and the rest I would do by hand with a quilting ruler. That's exactly what I would do because it's so geometric and it is on the bias, right? It's not top to bottom, it's sideways, it's diagonal. This is such an easy pattern to do. You just have to sit down and get the pattern in place. And you can see it is not perfectly squared, and that is part of the charm. But what really slayed me with this particular rug is that we do see these kinds of postage stamp geometrics, but I've never seen one with dit dots before. And I just thought, oh, you have got to be kidding me. All of these little compartments with the rugs, you see how much they liked using the blue for the dit dots? You see all that yellow with the black, like the bumblebee colors. It's so cool. They obviously started from the center out. They love their dusty rose, and so do I. But you see they were doing that kind of pistachio green. They got one ring of pistachio green, and then when they got to the next part, they were probably like, will it last? Will it last? Will it? But they just got as far as one edge and then a little bit. And then they switched to a different green, but they stayed with the green. So there is some thought to the color planning here. But at the end of the day, this is a hit or miss rug. And this is what we do. And this is our history. You're looking at our history. This is what women did. They just figured it out. Drawing lines on backing, getting all your colors together, doing the best you can with what you have. You don't have to go to the store and spend $450 on wool, right, to complete a rug. Just figure out what you have, what you can use. Maybe some of it's cotton, some of it's wool, some of it's pairs of pantyhose that you dyed. Who knows? But this is just such a great example of an early thrift rug. Linda Ann says it's such fun and happy looking rug. Love the colors with the dots. Me too. Who knew that dots could make this much of a difference? It's so cheerful. I absolutely love this rug. Let me see what else I have for you. I tried to put these in order. It took so long to get these into this slideshow. I didn't have any extra time to fuss with it. This is the back of the rug. So here's another example. Putting rugs in this dimly lit room. Now, I don't think that he was in these dimly lit rooms all day. He has this vast garden that overlooks the harbor. And as the story goes, it was the 20th century, so it's a well-established story. He lives on one side of the harbor at Beauport, and across the harbor is the castle that belongs to, it's the Hammond Castle, the Hammond organ person, right? Who owned Hammond organs, another very wealthy person. They live across the harbor from each other, quite a ways, but apparently they both loved music. And they would have music offs on a record player across the harbor on still nights where the sound really carried. Make up your own game on that rug. Oh, totally, Karen. It's like Pente or something like that, isn't it? That's a great idea. That is great. I love that idea. You know, you could also do, I'm going to go backward for this great idea. Karen, you're a fantastic ideas person. You could also do this border with a medallion in the center. Right? If you look like right up to that green, the second green border out, you'd still have a giant square in the middle. You could even pinch it and stretch it sideways so it's more of a diamond. But you could absolutely do this with a picture in the middle, or a year, or a scene. Right? You don't have to go all the way across with your geometric. You could think about whether you wanted to do something else with it too. But I just love the idea of these crazy days of them blasting music on a record player across the harbor, trying to out music each other with classical music and jazz music. Just so beautiful. What a moment in time. looking up Beauport, and I'm going to come back to you for a minute because I want to show you this. And 140, 140. While I was looking on the bookshelf for a different book, I found my book on Beauport. This is from the 1950s by Samuel Chamberlain. Where's Samuel Chamberlain? He did, I have all of his books. He did, this is Beauport in like, I think this is 1953. So this is one of the rooms. It looks exactly like this still. This is the Japan room that's all black walls with lots of red lacquer, right? Collected red lacquer and lots of aubergine colored stuff. Who would ever think that red, bright lacquer red, and aubergine would go together? Wait till you see. It's unbelievable. But the house, there's different floor plans for it. That's just like one part of it. He goes room to room in this book. And I got this book in an antique store, but I'm sure it's on eBay and stuff. I mean, beautiful, mostly not colored. But Samuel Chamberlain was a photographer who, in the 1950s and a little bit earlier, he kind of picked up where Wallace Nutting took off for taking beautiful interior photos, beautiful photos of historic houses and towns around New England. And any town you can name, particularly Cape Ann, Salem. There's one on Salem interiors. There's one on Salem doorways. Anything that you can name. If you look up Samuel Chamberlain, that was the house the way that it was. But I guess that's where I stopped reading. I just recently invested in a book light. Right, I got it from Amazon. So when I'm like falling asleep with Teddy, my little boy, I can put the book light on. It's got a double head, so now I can look at a book at night rather than just lay there and think big thoughts, right? Which is not good for sleep. But these books are just all black and white photographs. The quality is amazing. And in these photographs, we're about to see this hooked rug, right? In the show tonight. It's let me show it to you close up. It's like a quilt pattern. There's light shining on it, but it's like a lone star kind of a quilt pattern. I'm going to show it to you. It was there in the 50s and it's still there. But it's remarkable. Oh, I think that's the one we just looked at, right? With the little bricks that I said you move the postage stamp along. But this is an early reading book. I bent the cover today like a dum-dum. But you can see all the antiques that are in it. There's also this amber glass collection, right? More hooked rugs. It was just curious for me to go through it and to look at what rugs are still there. And the answer is all of them, which is kind of exciting. Thank you to Mrs. Woolworth, right, for saving this for all of time. What number did I say we were on now? 130 something, right? Anyway, if you're interested in this conversation and you want to go down the rabbit hole, these books are so inexpensive on eBay. So much good reading, more about the history of the house and the people who lived there. Oh no, what number did I say? It's not 130 something. Does anybody remember? I did a baddie. Did I do that? My mom loves it when I say that. Oh no. All right, come on and chime in if you remember. I'm scrolling up slowly. This is hard work. I promise I won't come back like that again. Sometimes I just think of something to say and I can't resist. Here, let me take a sip while we're doing this. If you can think of what number I just said, I thought it was 132. 140, thank you. Thank you, Anne. That is where we were. Thank you so much. Now, this is one of my faves in this house. You're better than me. All of you are better than me. My memory is not so good. This is one of my faves. This is upside down. This guide was kind of less inclined to, move furniture. And everybody gets to. Maybe the rules are a little bit different here. Michael was all about like, let's get in the closet. I didn't ask if we could like move this because that would be a bit impertinent, right? But I was just dying to see the rest of this rug. This was just the most extraordinary basket rug I think I've ever seen. Absolutely homemade. It's upside down for us here. Funny little flat basket, like a little garden type stone thing. 2 flowers with no stems, and you see there was an attempt to do a green background. Look at all the sort of daisy type flowers in the border that have super faded out. And look between the 2 flowers at that heart, right? Let's look at another picture of it too. It's sideways here, but look at there's only 2 flowers, a lot of leaves standing on end like little soldiers, and then in the middle they resolved the center spot by putting what looks like a heart in place of the leaves, and they made it a different color, which makes me think they meant it to be a heart. I just think this piece is so beautiful. I took a bunch of pictures of it the best I could. I couldn't really get on the other side of it either. But this is a beautiful, I would put this at an 1860s era rug. Me too, Lynn. I absolutely, but this hooker, right, the flowers are a bit of a mishmash in the middle, right? A bit of a potluck. And some of the leaves are, but you can see many of the leaves, they tried to do halfsies, half and half. And at the bottom of the vase, right, they did a scalloping on the vase. That makes me think it's more like a stone type pot thing for outside than a vase for inside, just in terms of the style and shape of it. It's a perfectly symmetrical one too, that they could have done half of it and then transferred the design to the other half. But at the bottom of that pot shape, they've got a checkerboard of color, like all these stained glass squares underneath it. And I think that is such thoughtfulness. So guess what? This is one of the patterns, I call it Gloucester basket, that I put into ribbon candy hooking. It had these kind of crests on the side, so I included that. But all these little rainbows, you can see, I felt I had to include them in the pattern because I didn't want you to forget they were there. And of course, if you end up getting any of these patterns, I'm going to send you the best photo I have of the original rug too. So those are all there if you like them. I copied the ones that I know I will do in the future. This is this is Brenda standing here in this room. You can just see every room, no matter what view you take a picture of, there are lots of rugs. So I've got to speed up here, but these are kind of, these are probably early 20th century, maybe even 1920s era. He was not all folk art collector, right? He liked newer rugs too. So I don't think we're getting as far as the Pearl McGowan era. He dies in the 1920s, and of course Pearl McGowan is starting her work as a rug hooker. But I think these are still older patterns, but probably early 20th century, because there is a trend in the early 20th century for a light or white background on textiles, right? It's the first time that that appears, and there is a huge trend. This is one of the bedrooms with an overshot bedspread. You can see that rug in the middle. Well, there's one at the foot of the bed we'll get a closer look at, but that's that Lone Star quilt pattern rug in the distance, right? We're going to creep in on it. We're walking in there together. This is the one that's on the side of the bed. I think of this as the peppermint twist. Just a field of flowers, and they are really kind of like olive-shaped flowers, right? Like they're kind of like pasta shell-shaped flowers, and then this nice barbershop twist, peppermint twist around the edge. I just thought, oh, that is so beautiful. I love the peppermint twist. This is out of focus, but don't worry, I have more. I was moving really fast. I was get the bum's rush too, but this is that there was quite a few rugs, at least 3, I think 4, at least that I counted, that were this exact borrowed quilt design. Like the Feathered Star, the Lone Star, whatever you want to call it. There were a lot of this design. I think this is the same one, but we're going to see more, and it will be confusing. I'll show you more when we come back to it. This is that green room, right, that people just love. This is a hand-painted ceiling. This jadeite green, you can see there is like a green vase on the left on a pedestal on the side of the bed. But this is that superb, enormous carpet that was recently restored. I was actually there while they were working on the restoration, and there was a textile artist who was restoring it. This is another view of it. I put a weird lens on it because I wanted to try to get it all. It's much fatter than it looks here, but so lush and flowery. And notice that this one on the sides also has the Oddfellow link, right? That chain link in red and light blue. Isn't that gorgeous? I'm going to speed up a little bit. And another view of it so you can see some other parts of the room. It really takes up most of the carpet. They did not flip that rug up, but I saw the girl working on it. And we can talk about that another time because I might still on my storage have the photos of the back of it where she was working on it and actively sewing it. This is another really unusual one with a fairly typical kind of amateur type border. It's very spiky, twiggy border. But in the center, they have created 3 distinct patterns that stand alone, and that is very unusual. And there is a problem here for them, I think, in their mind with colors running out. For me, it hits the sweet spot because it's like, wow, look at all these colors. You can tell there was a struggle happening with what am I going to run out of. But they tried to use the same kind of color palette in all 3 motifs. I've never, for myself, seen a rug this age that has the cathedral quilt on that bed is beautiful. Oh God, I'm gonna have to go back to that later. Everything in this house makes me crazy. I've yet to see a rug like this where we've got 3. These are not like, applique, Baltimore album type designs. These are 3 distinct standalone designs that could easily just be the medallion on their own, but they've been made separately. And it's just an oddity. It really is an oddity. I think I have one more. Hold on. one more of that. Let me shut this one. There we go. Yeah. So this is one side of it. You can see the kind of color variation that's in here. It's just over the top, isn't it? I'm not a big fan of the maize color, but I have to say in this rug, I wouldn't want it to be anything else. The maize with the salmon, the sort of periwinkles that go into the grays, the teal, maroon, it's just a lot of white. So striking. Isn't it just so striking? What a great idea, breaking it up like this. This was very dark, but I had to take a photo of it, and obviously I was not going to put the flash on. This was in the absolute dark, but I noticed it and I felt I had to take a picture of it. It looks like a vase that the stem part of it is faded and gone, but it looks like it was a very sort of symmetrical vase with triangular kind of what would now be called brutalist flowers. It's way before. This is an early 19th century rug. This is about as early as it gets. Similar motifs on the right and left, right? The one on the right is not quite as elaborate as the one on the left, but it does look like there was an attempt to make some kind of a concentrated formal bouquet in the center. Big, fat, what look like navy blue scrolls. This is just one of those rugs that screams to me. I saw my neighbor had this fancy rug with a flower in the center of it and all of these scrolls around, and I didn't really know how to do any of it, but I gave it a shot. That's what this rug screams to me. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite rugs in the house because I can just see the person sitting there just working it. And I'm hoping that they weren't frustrated, and I'm hoping that they thought and realized they were doing a good job, right? This is a from scratcher and beautiful rose motif with very abstract flowers. Little do they know that this is perfection, abstract perfection. You can see the black and white was a patterned material, probably a herringbone, but they did really well, I'm sure, with what they had. And I'm not being patronizing. I would love to have that rug. That's in like my top 5. And in a house with this many hundreds of rugs, that is really saying something. Another beautiful room with a beautiful view, and a big rug on the floor. I must have gotten closer to this rug for us, right? Oh, this is a different side of the room. This is like a corner heading closer to that window, right? Don't you wish we could see it as new? Absolutely. I wish I could have flipped that one over. Mm. I just noticed that the chair in this picture, the armchair, has a lot of real three-dimensional embroidery on it too. I love the rug on the floor here. I'm going to bring you in closer. Look at these water views. This is the same view, but just a slightly different angle. I thought it, the glass collection and the rug on the floor is so worth it. Now, light is hitting this rug. I think he was very strategic about which rugs he put in the light, because this is already a very light yellow rug. So maybe he thought, well, if it's a little less yellow, fine. How gorgeous is this? I mean, how gorgeous is this? To me, this is crazy, crazyville. I mean, I'm wondering if that yellow was an over-dyed lighter color. I'm wondering if they did something like with onion skins, because there's a lot of variation in that background. And they can't all be yellows, right? Yellow was not a common color at this time, but dyeing with onion skins was a very well-known thing. Don't you love the way that in the flowers, I mean, this is a 19th century rug. There's no question about it. I would say that this is an 1880s rug, right? Just judging from the style, looks like the illustrations from that time that you would find on book plates, right? The way that they went from one color to the next, to the next, to the next, almost like geodes, right? Almost like geodes, Robin, your geodes. It's so particular, right? And where they changed color, where they didn't, it has such a cartoony quality. I think this is in the top 3 of my favorites in the house. This rug completely blows me away. It's one of the ones I wanted to do for you, but I couldn't see enough of it. I'm hoping to get back there and to be able to have a bit more time to photograph some of these to try to peel the designs off. This is the large rug that was in the center. This is a 19th century rug. You see a lot of hit or miss going into the scroll work on the corner. This is a very subdued color palette, a much more formal rug, right? Not the spirit of thriftiness, in the spirit of formal. So I like the rug. It's not one of my favorite ones, but it's a bit stiff for me compared to others. You can see the close-up of the border here, right? It's a personal taste thing, not a value thing. Absolutely beautiful. A lot of color variation in the leaves, in the scrolls, a lot of hit or miss going into the scrolls. This is one that must be slated soon for restoration, because you can see there is an issue with the edges, and people are walking currently on this rug. It is a large rug, so I'm sure that they probably have been stalling. With the amount of rugs that are in this house, they can only do how many a year, right? It becomes ridiculous at a certain point. There are a lot of replica rugs in this house too, and where there are replicas, I will tell you, we haven't seen them yet. This is another one of those feather star, lone star motifs in the center. Isn't it wild and wacky and wonderful that they did this complicated quilt design in the center, and then it was almost like they said, enough is enough. Let's block it out on the sides and trace some leaves, right? I wouldn't be surprised if they traced these leaves from like the yard outside. It would be, so this is the same design as the one that we saw already, and we will see more examples of this. But I mean, it's just so much. It's so much detail. This is an absolutely stunning rug, as is the one immediately behind it. I've got to go a bit faster. I might have to carry over into coffee time, and I'm backed up on coffee time because I had a bit of a breakdown this past week and I canceled Tuesday. I'm so sorry about that. So I can always come back to this if there's a lot more. I don't want to sort of jilt us collectively by racing through, but let's see how far we get. You can see how it goes from being a very detailed rug to a less detailed rug with very flippity-floppity shapes of leaves. Now, it could be that this rug was begun by one person and finished by another person. That is always on the table as one of the options. Color palette's really similar, though, which makes me think it's the same person who is just very, very confident about doing a geometric and maybe less confident about doing something a bit more organic. I suppose we will never know unless somebody turns up a diary where they reference this exact rug, because I can promise you there are not a lot of rugs with that design in the center going out to a blocked background with floppy leaves, right? This is a beautiful rug too. This is another one that could be a commercial pattern or based on a commercial pattern with a rather undersized central medallion, oversized scroll, but it is very neat and tidily done. I really like the balance of this design because with that central design being so petite, the floral wreath, it looks more like a wreath than a giant medallion. And there isn't a flower in the center making us think it's just like we're choking on flowers. It's just a dainty little architectural kind of a wreath. Very, very designy, very subtle. I love the color placement of the rest of it. Just the flowers are done like a dream catcher. Absolutely, absolutely, Karen. The last rug, absolutely. This one is just, I like the very Art Deco tips on the flower petals, and they went full blocky on the border. We're just going to block out the color. There is a strong consistency of color. They made that blue in the middle that almost picks up the heart pattern in the center where the scrolls meet. The color placement is beautiful. It's perfect. There is some color change in the backing, the background color, which reminds us that it's an older rug. You can see there is quite significant fading on this one. Not as much as many rugs that we see, but in this house, that's quite a bit of fading. It's just a beautiful rug. It was the low-hanging fruit, so guess what? Beauport scroll. It's that ribbon candy hooking. I put a link to this page of these designs that I did from the Cape Ann Day in tonight's episode. If you're interested in looking, they're there. Another pretty one. This looks more like a commercial pattern to me, but then I thought, would anybody who is making a commercial pattern to sell put one flower in the center and this many kind of oddly placed flowers around? Because it's not really evenly or equally placed. It's not impossible. It's just, in terms of design, it's not a fantastic design. I love this rug, but I more love this rug because of its quirkiness, not because of a strong design aesthetic. And the corner designs, the corner's very strong, like that scrolling kind of bouquet feel with the leaves coming out of it, but somehow the leaves are very undersized, and there is plenty of room in that background to have evolved the leaves and maybe one more flower coming out from the corner. It's very different. Which makes me think that this is not a commercial design. These are just clues based on commercial designs I've seen from 19th century makers. They are pretty tight, and this one is less tight for me, but I just don't know. I don't have a sort of laundry list, a catalog of every commercial design going back to the 19th century in my head. Unfortunately, that is one of my goals. Now, this is my mom standing in front of another beautiful clipped hooked rug. Now, clipped rugs look different because they look more like contemporary rugs. They are very densely hooked these are anyway, with a very small cut. Now, I made a mistake here because I thought this rug with the rust border that I am in love with was the same as this rug. They're in the same room, but they're different rugs. So we're going to look at both of them in more detail. These are both clipped rugs. It gives it a very velvet, a very plush look, doesn't it? Very shapy, right? There is a little bit of shaping. I would not call this a Waldoboro rug, but there's a little bit of shaping. I'm sorry, out of order. A close-up of the rug we were remarking on just a few minutes ago. Beautiful dove gray border. I love the sort of how in some of the leaves they've done a very high contrast spiny veining detail, right? Like with this dark, dark, dark burgundy on this lime green leaf. For me, the colors of this rug are extraordinary. They were doing some strong horizontal hookings in the outer border, but you can see in the top and bottom, they kind of shifted and they were kind of filling in between that puff shape, that rounded puff shape, and the hooking got less horizontal. For me, that's a plus, right? It just shows me a better window into the style of the hooking that they were doing. Um, we are getting quite late. I might look at one or two more and then we might pick this up for our coffee time next week. Another detail of the same rug, because I just find it remarkable that we've got like a sage green with a lime green, with a crimson or tomato red, with more of like a raspberry, right? These are in rust with orange. These are just not traditional colors. It's an odd palette that I personally love. I know it's not for everybody, but I personally love. This is another very in the dark example. A shaft of light coming through. This is the same rug, right? I showed this one. Okay, there are several shaft of rug lights, but this is the same one from a different angle. This is actually a bit better than the last one we saw. Remember I said it had a very structured center, like the whole floral medallion center works off of a cross motif, right? A very strong north, south, east, west with these Jack and the Beanstalk leaves that are a lot bigger than one would expect, right, with the size of the floral in the center. This is what I meant to do. I want to look at these clipped rugs. They would have been hooked in a very, very narrow cut, very, very narrow, very, very dense and clipped. And it gives us the look of a contemporary rug, but it is a hooked rug. Lots of shading happening here, but more in the Art Deco style, right? Soft shading, not realistic, not photorealism, just wanting to introduce a lot of colors that aren't necessarily the natural match to what it would literally be, right? Because in the Art Deco period, we're still very whimsical. We are doing a lot of color replacement. We aren't seeing a lot of leaves in nature that are half ballet pink and half sage green, but you can make it that way in art, and this is a big sort of thrust in the Art Deco movement. So when we see rugs from this era, it's nice to see that even in textiles, people are experimenting with color and color placement, and that realism is not one of the top things on the list of considerations. This is the rust rug, the other corner of it. Very similar color palette, but very different, right? This big fat flower, one big fat flower on each corner, slightly different colors. There's more of like a purple red being introduced in there, lots of salmon and shrimp colors, little lobstery oranges. It's just a I just got scared. I heard a weird noise. I guess we're good. If you hear me scream, you know we're not good, because I'm locked in here by myself. So, whew, scared myself there. All right, let's see what else we got going. Oh, well, look at this. I'm going to take a quick sip while I look and listen. I think we're good. Either a very stealthy intruder or we're good. Beautiful painted doors, and I love this like amethyst colored glass doorknob. Um, yeah, I could not get enough of the details of the house. I'm probably going to stop after this rug because it looks like we have about another 30 slides. So I want to save those for next week because it's already almost 9. This is a replica rug, and I told you when we would see these, this is an exact replica of the rug that was there. And they are going through the house looking at, as quickly as they can in a house with this much stuff. Looking at the rugs that are in the most distress that need to be done, and it's just a question of who's first. So this rug looked just like this, but this is a replica of it. I have to say, you really can tell that this is a newer rug. When they flip over the rugs, all of the rugs on the back have a patch that has the sort of provenance of that rug, handed down from Henry David Sleeper or David Henry Sleeper. And the newer rugs also have a similar patch with the old patch. to say who made it now. And you can see it's a very new label. It's typed. Color is perfect because this is very, very new rug. Um, this is the other rug that was in that room, right? Let me just check forward. Hold on one second. This is the other rug that's in the same room. We saw this from a distance, so I want to end on this one. This is another beautiful 19th century rug. I would bet my life this is a Garrett Blue Nose pattern. They were doing this heavy, heavy, heavy scroll. Very feathery. It's a structured scroll. It's a big part of the motif, right? It's a strong element, but it's so soft. That's one of the things I love about the Garrett patterns. Their scrolls, they hit that perfect balance between being feathery and being architectural for me. So this says I have not had a chance, and I won't anytime soon, to go through all of my Garrett stuff. But I would be shocked if this was not that one of their Blue Nose patterns because of the age of the rug, and also it looks like one of their patterns, right? So beautiful. I mean, these are colors that people would have loved at this time. It was easy to dye red because of berries, right? No matter where you lived, you probably had berries that would make something red. And then the army green. And we get so much army green from all of the wars at this period. So Civil War uniforms, you get a lot of green army blankets. There's a lot of different greens in here, and it probably is a mix of those kinds of things. But just a beautiful rug. Let me show you the back of this one too, and then we will have completed this room. Oops, nope, 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 nope. There's a I think this is a new binding on the rug, very, very wide. You can see they're trying to protect it, but this is an original rug. It is not a restoration. Where they can make these temporary fixes, they do, because there are hundreds of rugs here. So seeing the front and the back of this one, I thought it was just beautiful and extraordinary. We are ending on 181. Thank you, Linda. It is, I can't believe how fast that went, right? I didn't go that fast. I hardly get to wet my whistle at all, but there's so much to say. It is a tall order. I mean, I feel like we were going faster than we've ever gone before. But to get both Cogswell Grant and Beauport in one night, we now know is impossible. And I don't want to rush it because these are original antique rugs. These are rugs that collectors who had kind of unlimited funds situations were able to collect. These are the ones that, with their great knowledge and vast, collecting expertise, these are the ones they chose. So we benefit from that by seeing them all on display at the houses where they actually lived. And I don't want to rush that. It's too good of a thing. But I hope that you enjoyed tonight. Please give us a thumbs up, a like, a comment, a share, anything that you can to keep the channel going strong and being visible. I really enjoyed spending some time with you tonight. I don't know if you noticed, but I changed this rug out recently. This used to be up, and I put it up again. I'm changing my set shortly, so I'm going to put different rugs around me, but all of that will be coming up. A Genius says, thanks for taking the time. It was a great adventure, and I wish we all could have been there together. But I wanted to go together at least tonight, and I'll probably turn it into a blog at some point too. I'm just up to my ears right now. But in any case, make sure, shameless plug, make sure you look at the Lincoln Ribbon Candy hooking, because I did quite a few of the rugs from tonight. I think I did 6 or 7. I was working on them last night while I was watching the Hallmark Channel, of course. And yeah, just last night. I only did 1 tonight. We haven't gotten to some of the ones I did, but I thought they were the most unusual of the ones that I saw that were possible with the information that I had with furniture kind of covering to reproduce. And I thought, let's reproduce as many as we can and honor the tradition of rug making, honor the original rug makers by celebrating the patterns. What would people think all these years, from when they did them, us recreating rugs that they designed, amateurs, right? It's just such a cozy thought for a Friday night. Great. Oh, Michelle, great to see you. Gail, great to see you. Happy weekend, everybody. Happy weekend. And I will be with you Friday. No matter what, I will be Monday. I will be with you Monday. And my plan for next week, you're going to have to check in with me Monday because, of course, these are summer days. I will be with you Monday. I always check the forecast when we get into the week because I have 2 little ones still. And sometimes there's only 1 or 2 clear days in the week, and on those days I want to know that I can take them to the beach or to the creek or to my mom's or go somewhere with them. So I want to check the weather, but I will certainly be with you Monday because I don't have a chance to touch base with you before then. And on Monday I'll tell you which 3 days next week I'm going to run the show. I think it might be our bingo night next week too. I'll have to check that. I think it is our bingo night. Thank you, Kaz. Thank you all for being on tonight. Cheers, my dears. Happy Friday. Take another look at the slideshow if it went too fast. get going with your hooking and send me your pieces for gallery night. Send them to ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com so I can get that going the week after bingo night, right? We can look at each other's work again. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will see you soon.